some foolish people out here who look at their personal relations with white folk, and they have good white friends. And I'm not doubting the sincerity of the friendship. Not at all. Not at all. I do not doubt that blacks and whites can be truly friendly, and we should be friendly as people. And I don't see any problem with having those friends, But do not confuse your personal relations with the relations between groups. Do not always assume that the dynamics that determine your personal relationships are the same dynamics that can be used between groups. That's a serious error that a lot of people make.
I live by the code, that's my eye. Whipping vegan food up in my pocket. Why they claim I acted so unruly? Cause I'm listening to while it moving Rudy.
Peace, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another experience of Geechee Conversations. Today we're talking about healthcare workers, people in the healthcare field, our people that's in the healthcare field. We have a dialogue around that. If you have any friends, family, people you know in the healthcare field, make sure you share this. If you're watching for Facebook, you can hit share. Also, YouTube, you can hit share as well. I'm going to let my powerful guest introduce herself. Then we'll get right into the dialogue. Go ahead, sis.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ikeoma Divine. Everybody calls me Kiki for short. I am a registered nurse, RN, BSN. I've been a nurse for only 9 years. However, I come from a lineage of nurses and healers on both sides. My paternal great-grandmother was a nurse and midwife in South Carolina. And from the stories that I've heard from the family, she was well known and was traveled far to deliver a lot of babies. That was her calling. Definitely with a lot of herbs or what have you. And on my mother's side, my grandmother's twin was also a nurse, and I do remember her. She was in the hospital, and my mother's grandmother, father's mother, was also, she was a Native American, but she was also a herbalist that dealt with herbs, because they would go to her for herbal remedies. So this is just not only a career, this is really a path of mine. I've been knowing since I was a child. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I knew it had something to do with healing. So yeah.
That's beautiful. So you're the right one, huh? I love it.
Yeah, I deal with both sides. I deal with when they say holistic healing, I deal with, I'm looking at all of it. It's just not the physical. I understand the spiritual, I understand the ancestral, I understand all of that. And that is the direction that I come from when I'm dealing with my patients. So yes.
I love it. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad you're one of ours in that field, because oftentimes these systems, we're not represented in the systems. And when I say we, I'm not talking about Black folks, because there's Black people in there. I'm talking about Black folks who are grounded. They know their identity, they know who they are, and they also know how to heal their people. And we're going to get into a good bit of that. I want to start off with this question about, obviously COVID has been, running rampant. I want to know how it's been like for African people, right? Considering African people, capitalism, and how this health field is going. And then COVID, like, what's been your experience like in these last, feel like a year, but last few months?
Well, I will tell you this. What I have to say is probably unconventional. It may be a little different from what you may have heard, but I've actually worked 2 COVID contracts this year. One in California and the other one in Texas. And now, mind you, I've been a travel nurse since 2012, off and on, but for the most part. So I've been traveling from state to state doing nursing for years. So I have nursing colleagues that that I talk to through, that work in different states. Now, before I took this COVID contract, I made a point to call my colleagues and ask what was going on the floors. And what surprised me, I thought was interesting, was what they were reporting was not what we were seeing on television. Okay, everybody was in straight panic mode in television. And I understand that there were hot spots. I did not go to New York, so I was not there in New York. However, where I was in California, I was actually in Oakland. We had such a low census, and the people that did have COVID, the majority of them got over it and went home, and the majority of them survived it. Now, let me say this, and even until this day, I hear a different, I'm not in the emergency room. I am the nurse that you see to stable, once you get stabilized, and we're, making sure that you go out. However, every week they give us the statistics of the new test, and, how many people were tested, how many people tested positive, and, how many people actually got sick or we had to be admitted. There was always a fraction of the people who needed to be admitted, as opposed to all the people who were tested or tested positive. Okay. And so I guess, we'll talk to that about that also, because my biggest thing that I advocate for is that we truly educate ourselves on science and understand. We need to understand anatomy and physics and microbiology, so we know how viruses work and how biology work, how viruses work, how microorganisms work, so that we don't depend on propaganda to teach us about ourselves and how this works. So I know people die, and I don't say this to try to downplay that people die, and maybe I'm a little numb to it because I've been a nurse for so long, but we see people die all the time. And flu season, people die all the time. It's just not put on the news. People are walking around with walking pneumonia and TB. I actually worked at the respiratory isolation unit downtown Atlanta in one of the major teaching hospitals. That's all we did. If people knew how much viruses and bacteria we were exposed to on a regular basis, we would never go anywhere, But when we educate ourselves on viruses, bacteria, how that works, and not just how that works, how do we protect ourselves, and what's really causing, because if they really got into the numbers and talked about how many more people die from mishaps in the hospital, misdiagnosis, we're not even going to get into, but that's a whole nother conversation about people dying from pharmaceutical medications and the side effects from some pharmaceutical medications. That's a whole other subject that I see in our community too. So, yeah, I know people, and I'm not saying that it did not happen and it wasn't. Yes, I know people die, and from what I've seen, and again, I'm still talking to my colleagues, and they're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing. None of them have gotten sick, and I'm saying nobody has gotten sick. But the majority of us who are around them all the time, generally, if we are healthy and taking care of ourselves, we're okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, the majority of us are okay. So
one of the things that stuck out. I mean, you said a lot of powerful things, and I hope people are paying attention. And if not, we can rewind after you finish this video. But one of the things that you talked about was the propaganda being a stream or a source of education for us, right? And we hear all these things of like, oh, America want to keep you, dumb, unhealthy, whatever. But when it's time to like actually realize that, I feel like there's this broken mirror. Like, America would not, especially African people, put you in a position to educate yourself to solve your own problems and the problems of your community or heal yourself, right? And so, what would you, just real quick, because I want to get to somebody's questions in the comments, how would you advise people to like start taking not only their health serious, but their community health and the people around them? Like, how would you advise to like coming from somebody in the field to get serious about like our conditions and situation?
Number one is to study. This is a science. This is not, this is really a science. Even the spiritual, emotional, that is all of it is science. Okay. And so really, and not study from an emotional point of view. And pay attention to what you're studying, because we're going again. I mean, this is a deep rabbit hole. I would just start and say, number one, study the history of this animal here, meaning the medical industry and its history around us here, on this continent, and also study, like I said before, anatomy and physiology. Go take a little course at a community college or something. If you really want to know, you really need to understand how the body works. You really need to understand microbiology. You need to understand the difference between a virus and the difference between bacteria or fungi, and how it affects the body, and literally you need to understand it. You need to understand chemistry so that you'll understand how the food breaks down and how the body responds, not just food but medication or anything. The skin is the largest organ. So when you're reading these products on the, that's on the shelves, and you look at the back of it and you study chemistry, you know what you're looking at and you know what it does to the body. Okay. And just because you mix something and it's all natural doesn't mean it's good for you. So if you understand chemistry, you need to understand what things that you can put together, what things you cannot put together. This is a science. It's not, you just don't put stuff together because it smells good. And oh, this is good for this and this is good for that, so I'm gonna put it together. You give it to the wrong person, you could kill them. You can make their condition even worse. So this is a science. If you want to know how to do this, take your time and study. Not only just take your time and study, I advocate we need more of us in there. And like you just said, not just anybody just with credentials. We need more spooks that can sit by the door, that can go in and get this information and go back and take it to our people and transform and make sure that we give the true knowledge. Do you understand what I'm saying? And still can go and code switch, go back into the hospitals, or go back into the lab rooms, or go back into these meetings with these doctors and advocate for us. Because that is one of the main things that I have to do, and I make sure that I do all the time. That's my job, especially for us. And we're dealing with doctors that not only don't look like us, they don't care about us. Then you got doctors that look like us and don't care about us. But when I'm looking at that woman in that bed, that's my mother, that's my auntie, that's my sister. I'm going to take care of her and make sure she's good. We need more people with that type of motivation, with that type of mindset, not just because it's a job. This is deeper than that. We have to be responsible for us, period.
We're going to get to a question to drive home that point in a second, but I want to go to the audience, to Latoya. She says, do you think that they are projecting a fear and panic to incite lower vibrations, especially on Black people and people of color, since they always say we are more prone, not to take away from the virus, but opinions? What do you think?
Absolutely. First of all, they know that stress alone breaks down the immune system. That's another reason why we're so sick. We're constantly stressed. This whole society over here has us stressed out since childhood. No wonder we get sick, a lot of us, so bad. And if you know anything about, okay, we'll just talk about viruses in general. Okay, unlike man, Viruses don't really, they don't discriminate. A virus does not discriminate. Okay, it sees a host, it jumps in and tries to do what it needs to do. I just thought it was really weird that people weren't putting two and two together, because I remember when it first came out in Italy, I think it was, and they were making, the Africans over there were making jokes and memes and videos, like they were celebrating in the street because the Italians, it was the older Italians that were more affected. They weren't affected, they were fine. Then they started talking about how they were surprised that the Africans weren't really getting these high numbers like they was expecting them to get in Africa. And the couple of cases that they did show up in Nigeria and South Africa were brought in from Europe. They were brought in from another place. And still the majority of the people did not get sick. However, it's real interesting how when it came to America, it just affected us in proportionate numbers. I don't understand why nobody didn't put two and two together. So this virus, once it came into the US atmosphere, it just became racist. It skipped all the people, it skipped all the white people that refused to wear masks. It skipped all of them. And it came to all of us with masks and adhering to everything. And we were disproportionately, sick. So I think, yes, there's some truth in it. There were people that have gotten sick. There were, but just like every year, and I'm just saying this from a nursing perspective, every year we have issues with yearly viruses that go around, and people that's what happens. It's a natural it's a natural occurrence. And again, if you have people that's sick, our lifestyle over here is ridiculous. We're not supposed to be sedentary people. Just by nature, we're not supposed to be sedentary. But yet and still, most of our day consists of sitting down somewhere, whether it's at a computer or going at home and sitting back and watching television. That's not even in our nature. So that again, and that on top of the stress, the unnecessary stress that our body, the chronic stress that's not natural for our bodies. It's so many things that contribute to our immune system not being able to adapt, so yeah, that's things.
You won't get too much about what you put in your body. Definitely, that's a good thing. So I want to pivot a little bit and kind of go back to the first question in a way. So Kwame Ture, tons of revolutionary leaders, and anybody who has an ounce of economics understand that capitalism has misorientated our people, right? And so when you think about this, there's this field, and I don't want to get you in trouble with your peoples and your peers, but people who join this occupation, doctors, healthcare, whatever, from your experience, are more, especially our people, are we in it for the money or for the people? And then what's your advice? Again, are people joining these fields in this capitalist society for the money, or is it for the people, right? For the people you experience? And then what's your thoughts on that?
I would say I've come across both. That people get into it. Some get into it for the money. They usually don't last that long because this is a very stressful. It's a very stressful occupation on all levels. It's extremely stressful. But also too, just from my experience, I've come to learn that all skin folk is not kinfolk, and so I don't necessarily, I first, I try to give everybody a chance or what have you. But I do notice a big thing. Is that people get into it. There are some people who really do care. I'm not even going to take away from that. We have some very excellent, from CNA to, doctors who really go in and advocate. Is it the majority? No. Can I say that most of them probably come into the field, especially trying with good intentions? Yeah. Is burnout a reality? Yes, it is. And that's a whole other thing too. Even when we talk about what happened in New York, and I know I'm a nurse, I saw the contracts. I'm a travel nurse, so I got all the agencies sending me information. They were having us working anywhere 5-6 days in a row. That's dangerous. 12-hour shifts, really 13 hour from 7 to 7, whatever it is. We're talking 12-hour shifts, nonstop adrenaline rush. We're talking about people's lives. People are burned out. We can't think. That's not humanly possible for somebody to think straight, and be able to make life or death decisions with that type of stress. We're not getting sleep. You can't. We need our sleep. Like seriously, the healer has to heal. Our bodies have to rejuvenate. They were sending us into those contracts and still are 48, 60 hours a week. 48 hours, okay, yeah, sometimes, but 60 hours and nonstop. And some of them were saying 7 days straight for 21 days. They were having contracts for 7 days straight for 21 days. Okay, so you was making $10,000 a week, but you were killing people in the process because you cannot think. You can't, if somebody is losing and they can't, losing their breath and they can't breathe, and you tired and you've been running and running for the last 48 or 60 hours in a row. There were a lot of people, I do believe, that were killed due to some form of negligence. And it may not have been negligence on purpose. It was probably because of burnout and, the inability to make certain decisions because we were tired. And again, it was about listen, it's a lot of rich people because of this whole COVID campaign. I'm going to tell you that. It's a lot of rich people. It's a lot of rich people because the government was paying a lot of money to these hospitals for this whole COVID thing that was going on. And I saw a lot of stuff with my own eyes. And like you said, it's certain conversations I had in private that I don't really discuss in public, but I would say this. There's a lot of stuff that was going on that should not be going on. And I actually walked away. The last contract I had, I walked because I was like, I didn't sign up for this and I'm not doing this. Because at the end of the day, I have to look at myself in the mirror.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine, just being from the outside. I had a recent experience. One of my barbers was in a bike accident, and he had to go to obviously a hospital, and he's still there, and he's pretty much doing his best to recover. But I remember going to the office, and one, his name is Baba Tahuti, right? And he's obviously an African-centered person, but when you go in these spaces, there's a lot of white folks, and the care there sucks, right? And I remember even asking the white lady about something that was going on with him. He looked like he was having pain, and she was just like, she didn't really care or whatever. And so we always talk about nation building and responding to these parasitic beings. But we don't have our own hospitals. we don't even have our own schools. So my question is, and this is probably, just basically off your experience, how far along are we from having our own facilities and being in those spaces? Like how far is it, do you think?
I'm going to just say this. Even if there was enough of us, even if there was enough of us who were credentialed, who could all get together and open our facilities, I don't think people understand how deep this rabbit hole goes with pharmaceutical companies and politics and money. You're talking about billions of dollars of money. I mean, I'm quiet because I'm trying to be picky with my words. I'm just going to say. And I know there have been people that wound up missing or die, mysteriously, because you talking about billions of dollars. It's a deep rabbit hole. Even if we had our own facilities, like we have HBCUs, but they are they are the money that comes to them come from the government. And once the government gives them their money, you have to teach what the government tells you to teach. So that's why I said we need more. We have to adapt to our environment. Okay. We definitely have to adapt to our environment, and adapting to that environment requires us to be those credential spooks at the doors.
Right. You mentioned that spook, and sometimes I get frustrated with people who have this notion that they're going in the system to change it, right? And if we can play on the spook a little bit, if you watched the movie or read the book, this brother and Barbara Greenberg did not write the book to insinuate that he was going to go in the CIA and change it. He's going to get the resources, get that education, and organize it. And so I feel like we have romanticized that. It's almost like, again, I was related to like you being in a relationship with a horrible ass dude and he's beating you, whatever. Like, you're not about to change him. He's going to change you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, right. And I think in your adaptation makes so much sense, right? To be able to adapt to a situation, to extract the resources and give to your people.
Absolutely.
My next question is, for those people who are actually really in there extracting information, education, resources to give to their people, give us some words for the people who are burned out and stressed. What is some encouragement? Like you said, it's a long way to go, and it's so much it's deep. The rabbit hole is deep. But what are some words of advice for the stressed out people, the people who are facing being burnt out?
First and foremost, you need to take a break. Life is too short, and I always, I make this statement, but kind of, rhetorical question: who's going to heal the healer? And I have these conversations with a lot of other caregivers. Period. Whether they actually whether they're actually credentialed or or in the system, or they are, because there are a lot of caregivers who take care of their family members. If the caregiver is burned out and can't think, you can't help those if you're burned out. Just like, when you get on the airplane and they teach you, hey, if this plane come down, you need to put your oxygen on first before you help the next person. We have to put our oxygen on first. We have to. Sometimes we have to take a break and do us. And we're not taught that. And I just speaking, especially the conversations I have with a lot of Black women, a lot of ADOS women. We taught from, childhood. Don't nobody care about you throwing a pity party. You don't have time to, no, stuff needs to get done. And so we're taught at a very young age, either by watching other people, or we would literally told ourselves, we have to constantly make sure everybody else is okay and not take care of ourselves. And I'm here to say, no, we have to take care of ourselves. I make sure I take a break between contracts and go and I heal. I make sure I take that time to rejuvenate myself. And I find myself a lot of times when I do go into, the contracts of the hospitals, patients be like, well, wow, you're so attentive. Some of these other ones, they just quick and blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, they burned out. And I'm like, I'm like this because I take time off to rejuvenate. And I will probably be the same way that they are. And I know that that's another indication to me that I've been in a place too long and I need to end my contract if I start not caring. Because when you're tired, the empathy leaves and you just start going through the motions. That's not true care. But for all my caregivers, I'm constantly telling them, you have got to take a break for you. I don't care if it's a long bath at the end of the day. You lock that door. The kids, they'll be all right. Feed them, cook the food, go and take your bath. Yeah, we can't be, we were taught that we were the mules of the world. And yeah, we do a good job at it. But if we took that same care that we put on everybody else and do it for ourselves, we would be even more powerful as healers and caregivers. So yeah, take a break. who's gonna heal the healer? You have to heal. You have to make it a point to make sure that your health is taken care of.
That's important, man. You meet people in official healing spaces, and just a lot of us in our entrepreneurial journey, we have drawn healing uh, business ventures or healing the world, and quite often it's this notion of like you're healing other people in thoughts of healing yourself, but you're actually not doing the shadow or the real work of healing yourself. You're just kind of like trying to heal people when you're fully broken or whatever you want to call it. And I think it's important, especially when you said after these contracts, I intentionally go and heal. Like using that word, using that language is important because it's not like a break, but no, actually, I'm going to intentionally heal because the work that I'm giving is causing trauma or pain to me as well that I need to heal from so that I can be fully involved. I mean, fully prepared for the next people. I think that's important. I appreciate you sharing it with us. If you're watching on Facebook, definitely share, comment any questions you have as we continue the dialogue. People on YouTube and the people who are rewatching this, appreciate you for checking this out. Earlier, you mentioned about educating yourself. There's so many. There's community colleges you can go to. There's online courses that you can take for free. So educating yourself is imperative, especially. But are there any programs out there that you know of for African men and women that can help them get into the field or even be better at the field? Any programs or resources that you might know about?
Really, to get into the field, there are certain like literally, if you want to be a nurse, you got to go to nursing school. If you want to be a doctor, you've got to. There is no general way about it. Get in the school, get your credentials, pass your test. A lot of things that they teach in theory goes right out the door on that floor. I'll tell you that. And anybody that's experienced will tell you that. But the bottom line is you still need to know what you're doing. You still need to understand, the difference between alkaline and acidosis and alkaline. You have to know how to calculate things. You have to know what you're doing. One thing that I do appreciate though, and this is serious, and I appreciate that when you go in nursing school or medical school, anything below 80% is an F. This is really, you really have to know what you're doing. And if this is a passion and this is something that you're drawn to, you're going to have to dedicate yourself. I tell new nurses or nurses student all the time, I slept with my books. I fall asleep studying and I would wake up studying. Why? Because I knew I had to be able to get these credentials to do what I wanted to do, to write my own ticket. I knew that I had to do these things. I also understood that I was in it and not of it. That I went in and regurgitated what I need to regurgitate to get my credentials, but I also took in what I needed to take in. I knew I needed to, like I said, I knew I need to understand the difference between acidosis and alkaline. Knew I had to understand how it affects certain parts of the body, the difference between metabolic acidosis and respiratory acidosis. I needed to understand that, so, and understanding those things, it allows us to go back to our communities and be able to break it down, in layman terms. So when I have, a woman that's older enough to be my aunt, and, she's been diagnosed with high blood pressure, what have you, and I come in and she got that pot of greens, it smelled good, but she got the fat back in the greens and stuff. And I'm just like, listen, auntie, let me give you this recipe. I know how to make these. The greens still gonna be good, but we gonna get rid of this. You know what I mean? Like those kind of conversations. We need us in there to be able to, and I ain't even gonna lie. I've actually had a couple of incidents where I have told people, look, this is what the doctor's saying, but this is, I can't tell you not to go against the doctor, but this is what I'm going to tell you, and read between the lines for people to get the messages that they need to get. You understand what I'm saying? So, and again, just piggybacking on what you were saying about the whole study. Yeah, you need to study. You have to. This is a science. There's no way around it. It's not, you can't take a workshop. And unfortunately, this is a micro, wave society. And, a lot of, especially the last, generations that were born in the last 20, 30 years, everything comes quick, especially with the internet. No, some things take time. You have to study. You have to put in the work.
Right.
You can't just take a workshop and just go start, healing everybody. That's not how this works. It's not how this works.
But since I want to ask another question about getting a clear understanding or even a perspective on progress, right? One of the foundational books, especially in this field, just one. I'm not very versed on all of them, but I read Medical Apartheid, and I think a lot of people have probably heard about those things. Tuskegee experiment, any of this stuff, right? My question, there's distrust between our community and these people, these parasitic people, I keep calling them. But since medical apartheid, since this stuff became more visible to us to see, are things getting better in that field, do you think? And how can we be sure that they're getting better? I know education was one thing, but go ahead. You're shaking your head. Nope.
No, it's just instead of them lying, they still lying, but they still have trials. They still have. I'm watching my words because it's only so much stuff that I can talk about, but it's some stuff that go on now that I try to talk to people. I'm sorry. I'm trying to watch my words because I want to cover my license, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on, a lot of things when somebody's in pain in the ER, those papers that you're signing, especially if you're in a teaching hospital, you are saying, yes, experiment, whatever new drug, yes, or whatever new drug you need to give me, And so I tell people,
real quick,
I kind of believe.
Real quick, give us that. I heard the teaching hospital, and I'm not sure that people understand that. But explain a little bit about the teaching hospital and how they can identify those.
A lot of teaching hospitals are associated with universities. And if not, you can usually just ask, is this a teaching hospital? But most of them are in urban areas. You won't find teaching hospitals out in certain suburbs. They're usually in urban areas, downtown, main hospitals, in urban areas. I'll say that again. Now, there's pros and cons to it. If I got into a car accident, if my arm got severed or something, take me to an emergency room at a level 1 trauma center. They have some of the best equipment and can, some of the highest tech stuff that can get you taken care of. If I'm coming in for something chronic, please educate me so that I can go home and take care of this. The reason why people keep coming into the hospital for chronic illnesses is lifestyle. It can be avoided. A lot of things can be managed. They don't like to use the term reversed, but I've seen people manage their health to where they don't need to come into the hospitals anymore. And they say that I've seen a lot of people, especially our people and them older people. Let me just say this just real quick. I have had the experience, and I think it was very pivotal in my nursing career where I did home health in the South. And a lot of these places I was going was these rural places in the South. And the conversations I had with some of these African-American elders, I was coming there to teach that they was teaching me. Okay. They know their herbs. And I even had one man that had his own remedy that kept his blood sugar down. I came in, I had to check his medicine. I'm like, well, you're not taking your insulin, but your blood sugar's fine. He's like, no, I don't take that. He said, don't say nothing to the doctor. I don't want him to know. I just go and fill it out because I don't want to get in trouble. It's the mentality. He said, but this is what I do.
Wow.
And it worked. And what he got from the grocery store. And I watched him take it. And I watched him, I watched his health. His blood sugar was fine. But I think it's pros and cons. I believe that if I'm unstable, if my life is threatened, take me to a acute care hospital just so I can get stabilized. Do what you need to do to stabilize me to make sure, but not for anything long term. No, or anything chronic. And that's just not me. I hear a lot of nurses being like, I ain't going to no hospital. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z because we know what goes on in the hospital. Sometimes we even have to tell people, go home. Look, you go home, you take this, and you'll be okay. I've had to have those conversations. You don't need to be here. Why are you here? You don't need that. This is what you need. You go home, do this. You're going to be okay. You know?
Tell me this. So I wanna know if there's any recommendation in terms of books, and I'm talking about for people who just need to know general information that they should know, and then books for people who are in the field and want to get in the field, especially as it pertains to, like we talked earlier, we need more of us in those spaces. So some books that might can send people books, resources that send people just in general, and then the people who are in the field or want to get in the field.
Okay. In general, I usually, you mentioned one earlier, one of my favorite medical apartheid. I read that when I was in nursing school. Very informative. So that you need to understand what you're dealing with. You need to understand what what we're dealing with. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, know your enemy. And I'm not saying that this is the enemy. I'm just saying you need to know what you're dealing with. And history does not history always repeat itself. We definitely have a way of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Some may call it insanity, but we do need to learn what has been done and what is still going on. Also, I tell people too, and I understand this whole craze, and listen, been there, done that. With the eating thing, right? I was, vegan, vegetarian for years. Then I started traveling and seeing things, and I had to learn what was right for my, anatomy, what my body says works for me. I think a lot of that has to do with ancestral DNA. But another book would be, as far as eating, I always suggest Eat Right for Your Blood Type. I've suggested that to people. This is not a book based on emotion. This is a book based on science. We all have different blood types. Your blood types determines a lot of things about you, especially how you metabolize a lot of things. What may be fine with one person may not be fine with another person. Here we go with DNA. If your people were from the shore, yeah, they ate fish a lot. But then if your people were from more inland, they didn't eat seafood. And so you wonder how come every time you eat seafood, there's a certain, right. Yeah. Everybody wasn't vegetarians. The majority of them wasn't vegetarians. They ate meat periodically. They didn't eat it like we eat it here in the US, where it's half your plate. You know what I mean? They didn't eat it where it was half the plate. So learning really to understand biology, and how the body metabolizes food. So, find out what your blood type is. Start with that. And then practice on yourself so you can learn, okay, this is what works for me. This is what that's what I suggest for people. Also, too, it's all connected: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. Degree. Because a lot of our illnesses that I see caused by stress. The majority of our illnesses, especially this quote unquote all autoimmune diseases that everybody's having now. Autoimmune diseases are usually they go with that when they don't know where it comes from. We call it idiopathic, meaning they don't know what's causing it. So they don't know what's causing it. It's autoimmune. Okay. But basically what's causing it is stress. And if you're talking about you're dealing with us, we're talking about lifetime stress. And a lot of us are dealing with ancestral stress, meaning that those that came before us. And that's a whole other science, and that's a whole other conversation right there. And so we need us that's in the field that understand that, so that when we go to our people, we know what we're dealing with. I know that it's not this greens with all this extra fat in it that's causing this high blood pressure. I understand that the people that you come from were stressed out, and the life that you've lived this lifetime is still stressing you out. And your body is saying, I can't take it anymore. Your heart is saying, I can't take it anymore. Mm. So, understanding all of that, understanding all of that. So yeah, post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. Degree is deep. She actually has a book and a workbook.
Yeah, she's a sister. I'm gonna ask you one more question that's probably not so good to deal with your, losing certificates and stuff like that, but it's the last one in that field. But if you had to give a grade of the U.S. healthcare system, the healthcare system, the medical system, what's your grade, and then explain your grade a little bit.
I'm gonna give it an F, and I'm gonna tell you why I say F. No, I'll say a D. Okay, I'm gonna give it a D. Out of A through A being the top, and yeah, I'm gonna give it a D. And I'm gonna say this: I honestly, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, the money has taken over. The greed has taken over. This is not necessarily, that has never been a healthcare system based on morality. Even though, these doctors are supposed to take the Hippocratic oath and say, I do no harm. That's not necessarily what goes on. I say a D for passing because there are some things that they are coming up with that I can see can help people that have helped some people, even if it's temporarily. To get out of acute stage. And when I say acute, meaning something that happens that impairs them immediately, that breaks them down immediately. They do have something. If somebody comes in with asthma, by all means, give them a breathing treatment. If they're in an acute stage in their life they have EpiPens. If you get allergic to something and your throat starts, closing up, hey, we got medicine for that just to get you back on point. So I'm giving it the D because there are some things that we do use that I have seen help people immediately or in an acute phase. However, that's just, the oil a little bit on the whole machine. And a lot of these, and I can't say, oh, there's evil doctors. Listen, it's a lot of pressure. First of all, medical school is not cheap. And you're coming out up under 6-figure debt. Just like anybody else, they're going to do what they need to do to cover that debt. And so, yeah, this is a well-oiled machine. It is nothing new, but it is out of our hands. It's not about changing it. It's about getting in there and adapting to protect yourself. Get in there to, it's a lot of things we're not going to be able to change. You need to understand the machine so you know how to ride it. Understand that motorcycle so you know how to ride it. You know where to push it, where not, how far not to push it. You understand what I'm saying? Use it to your advantage. Use that motorcycle and go from point A to point B. Don't step on it and let it take over. It'll kill you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So you talked a little bit about stress, and sometimes we do well to identify the stress, the conditions, and also have the language for it, right? So when we think about being dominated, think about racism, right? Racism causes, or the purpose of racism is to achieve hegemony, right? And it's for a group to be dominated psychologically, politically, economically, socially, culturally, right? And then colonialism, you think about that. So I want to kind of go to your thoughts about Frantz Fanon. I'm not sure if anybody ever read Towards the African Revolution. He was a psychiatrist who was sent to France or to Algeria to work on the patients there of a colony that's being colonized by French people. So after he's like testing these people and he's figuring things out, he realized that there's nothing wrong with these people. It's wrong with the system and these other people. And so he wrote a resignation letter. And I want to just read a couple things that actually, I really want to read one thing that he said. He said, the function of a social structure is to set up institutions to serve women's or men's need. A society that drives its members to desperate solutions is a non-viable society, a society that needs to be replaced. Right? So I'm not suggesting that everybody quit and join the revolution. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. But for the people that is in there, again, sis, I want you to drive this home. You're not necessarily going there to change it, but you are going there to learn the system, get the information, save some of your people while you're there. But eventually, we need to learn how to function and build a function without Europeans being the center of everything that we need and want. So when you think about people like Frantz Fanon and many other people, even yourself, who are in these systems and hella conscious, hella aware, what do we need to be, building outside of there so that we can eventually separate from these people who, I think any logical person can say they've been killing us for this long and they don't have any intention to stop killing us. So
Right.
what's your thought?
I think again that we need the education. It's the education point, because if we are educated to know how to take care of ourselves, the prevention is worth a pound of cure. You're not going to need to go into the hospital or go to them for their pharmaceutical drugs if you have the education of how to take care of yourself. Period. If you know how to live a healthy lifestyle. And again, it's easy for me to say. I think it just takes a certain mindset. Everybody's not a leader. And what I have found is that some people are very comfortable in their illness. Some people use illness as a way to get the attention that they didn't get in childhood. This is the mental, thing. Some people are so caught up that I could, you and I could tell them the whole stone cold truth. They wouldn't hear nothing we had to say, but somebody else that looks like not like us, they'll believe whatever they say immediately.
Right.
And so this is what we're dealing with. And I don't want to sound harsh.
Right. I think having a
most successful revolutions did not include the majority.
No.
They did, because the majority they were comfortable. They were comfortable in their state. And what we have to realize, there are a lot of comfortable people. There are a lot of comfortable African Americans that are comfortable in what they're doing. And unless they have been shaken, some of them, they're comfortable with just sitting back and just, instead of dealing with the stress, they'll just pop the pills.
Mm.
And that's the reality. That's something that, because I ain't gonna lie, when I first got into it, I was like, yo, I'm saving the world. Like, no, I'm getting all of us out this hospital. And I had to learn. That was my lesson,
Right.
that I had to teach accordingly. I understand on a whole nother level what Harriet Tubman meant when she said she could have freed a lot more. She could have freed a lot more. There was a lot that were comfortable with where they were at. There are a lot of us, unfortunately, that are comfortable with where they are. I can't help you. And that's actually the way that I curtail my teaching. When I'm teaching whatever, whether it's medicinal, spiritual, whatever, if you want to learn from me, you need to be ready to take control of your own health, mental, physical. I will give you the tools and tell you what you need, but you're going to have to do so much. And a lot of people don't want to do the work.
Right.
And so then it comes to, and I make a joke sometimes, listen, this whole standing up for everybody, it didn't work out too well for, Malcolm X or MLK definitely didn't work out for Jesus. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I ain't nobody's world hero. I help those that want to help themselves.
I appreciate that. One of our lectures, we talk about again hegemony being domination of other people, and all Africans, no matter where they sit on the globe, they have to respond to hegemony, and there's 4 responses. So you have the homicidal response. You got us killing each other, assassinating each other's character. Everything that white folks did to us, we're doing it to each other. You have the suicidal one. You kind of talked a little about those people. The suicidal people will either kill themselves immediately or insidiously. They'll take pills until they perish. They'll eat themselves into comas, risky behaviors. Then you have the assimilationist, that person who they're set up to be white. They're going to change their proximity. They're going to probably practice genetic annihilation by trying to marry into. And then you have those people who are sovereign nation builders, and those are the minority people. And so thinking about those minority people, there's this thing that I always tell leaders. I've never seen a shepherd said, "Damn, I wish there was more shepherds." You realize that the sheep are who they are; they have value, and you manipulate the sheep to, create the solution that you need or achieve the things that you need. So if you're speaking to those sovereign, those nation people, those leader oriented, what are our people capable of? Like when you think about healing and growth and just education in general, like what do you think, or what would you tell these people that our people are capable of?
Same thing that I was speaking earlier. Learn the system, learn the science, so that you can come back and make it and benefit for yourself. You need to learn what is going on. This is the game of chess. You need to be able to think strategically and not emotionally. They have studied us. They recognize that we're very emotional people. So they bank on that. And a lot of decisions that we need to make cannot be made on emotions. Has to be strategic, has to be methodical. We have to study from a scientific point of view and not an emotional point of view. Can't take everybody with you. The very people that you love, you may have to leave behind. You know what I mean? Like you may just have to watch them self-sabotage. Yeah, really. It really is. Learn the machine. Learn the machine and use it to benefit yourself, your home, your community, those who are willing and who want to survive, those who are invested in their own health and and start with the children. You teach the children. That's how they get us. They started with the children.
Right.
They know to target the youth. We have got to get back control of our children. This whole coronavirus thing has been a blessing in disguise if you took care of it properly. It forced you to teach your children at home. Some people got it and some people still haven't gotten it. But we have to educate ourselves and educate our children, that next generation, because you know what? I need my babies to be able to take care of me when I can't get up and move around and take care of nobody else. When I put my time in and it's time for me to sit down, I need to know that what I taught, they know how to take care of me and I'm going to be taken care of.
One of the things that we talk about often as well, like you said, I think people who are building, people who are in these spaces of creating a solution and responding logically to domination, we always ask, like, well, how can we manipulate or educate or inspire or incentivize the masses? Because those are the people who are kind of whatever. But there's always time, right? Again, like you said, COVID, all the stuff are like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. COVID taught you can work from home and educate your job, like easy, right? And you was kind of forced into doing it. You've seen. But I want you to finish on this. We're going to be wrapping up. Any questions? Make sure y'all chime in. What kind of self transformation maybe did you go through, or did you would encourage us to go through when we are pursuing this kind of work, and when I say work, I mean even healing ourselves and healing the people around us, but what kind of like self-transformation should our people be going through to make sure that we're healthy enough to like alter our situations?
Know thyself. And I mean that on all levels. And I'm talking about from spiritual, ancestral, mental. It is important that you understand who you are and where you come from. And when I say where you come from, oh yeah, I come from Africa. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about DNA. And I'm not talking about taking a test either. Let me just say this. All I can speak on is just my personal experiences, right? And honestly, there's a point in my life where I was like, I don't want to have nothing to do with any of this. And the moment that I started getting back into this and started studying myself, was at the time my great grandmother, the one that was a midwife in South Carolina, when she passed away. And I didn't realize that till I went to her gravesite to pay homage and recognize the time frame when she passed away. And when I started, I couldn't sleep. I had to start studying. Study not just Western science. You need to look to more traditional sciences. And don't go by what somebody tells you. Literally, study. If you actually think people be like, oh, astrology, blah, blah, blah. Listen, that's all they had was time to sit back and look at the stars. If you haven't been to Africa, I'm telling you, it seems like Africa is closer to the moon. Whenever I'm in Africa, it's like the moon is right there. The stars are right there. They studied the stars. That is a science. What you see in the horoscope, sun astrology, that's the tip of the iceberg. When I was drawn to that science, the woman who's taught me had been studying for 30 years and told me, I'm still studying. This is something that takes lifetime. And she's correct. That was in 2003. I'm still studying. Okay. But I got into it because I wanted to learn about me. Who was I? Why am I here? And one thing that helped me was to learn my purpose and my soul purpose and why I came here. And that made a whole lot of stuff clear. My actual my first career was an accountant. I was an oil and gas accountant because I was following what everybody else told me to do. I'm following, my mother was an accountant. Stepmother was an accountant. I did what everybody else told me that I was supposed to do. But that's not what I came here for. And when I started studying myself, when I started learning about myself and who I was, it got rid of a lot of stress, because the stress of me trying to be what everybody else told me to be, that went out the window. And when I started living my life authentically and then started dealing with my own traumas, that's a whole other thing, because this mental, emotional, and I know you mentioned something earlier about teaching, or trying to help other people. What I have found, and this is how the universe works, it never fails. It never fails. I always wind up working with people that are a reflection of me in some kind of way. And me healing them, I'm healing myself. I'm sitting up there and I'm teaching them. And a lot of times I'm like, I need to be listening to them. I'm talking to myself. This is the way that it works, So really learn thyself, know who you are. And within this revolution, everybody's not supposed to be the priest or priestess. And it may look glamorous. That may not be your role. Everybody's not supposed to be the lead revolutionary. He may look fine or whatever standing up there, but that may not be your job. Your job might be lookout. That may be what you came there for. Honor that. Hold that. You know what I mean? Like, recognize who you are and stand in that and study it. If you security and lookout, then do your martial arts. Learn what it is you need to do to become whatever the best it is that you're supposed to be doing. Learn your role. And it may be more than one role, but learn your role. And so it's an ongoing thing. When I talk to elders and they still talking about, they still changing, they still learning themselves. It never stops. As long as you're walking on this earth, it is a whole process. Change is inevitable.
Right.
Change is always inevitable. So yeah, you need to learn thyself, literally. And that's when the healing begins, when you start to learn who you are.
I love it. You know, I always ask people, like, if you walk in a college campus right now and you wanted to take a geography class, right? And y'all, the Q&A for the professor. You ask the professor, how long have you been doing this? Oh, I just started this week. You probably walk out the class like, yo, what? But the professors and the people that you look up to, these people been in this field for 20, 30, 40 years. They've been studying, they're still going. And so
Still studying. Yeah.
I think it's powerful. Like, once you understand who you are and what you have to contribute to your people, you have to study. If not, you're gonna be recreating shit. You're gonna be doing things wrong, not understanding. And one thing I do hate is people who be like, man, F all this talking, let's just get to work. And you ask them, well, what's the problem? Well, I'm not sure. So if you go do busy work, you probably gonna do it wrong, right? And so I think it's important, and I appreciate you delivering that, of standing in yourself and being who you are, learning who you are, but also studying, which is a lifelong journey, lifelong task. So I appreciate that. Any final words you want to give? Any things you got going on that you want to share with the people rewatching and watching live? Any final things you want to say?
I just encourage everybody, literally, pay attention. Pay attention with your eyes. Pay attention with your people are talking about they're not sleeping well, anxiety. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to what's going on. Learn how to read in between the lines. Pay attention to what's not being said. And I understand and I appreciate, especially when I was young, I wanted to fight and change, blah, blah, blah. But what I have learned is sometimes you need to learn how to adapt. The ability to adapt is your best survival skill. Okay, to adapt accordingly. That will make sure that you survive. So guess what? If they are talking about there may be a food shortage and you live by the water, I guess you better learn how to fish. If they talking about a food, I guess you better learn how to grow your own food. You ain't got to make no big announcement. You know, if you see what's going on, you need to move accordingly.
Right.
You know, because there are a lot of changes that are going on. There's a lot of changes, and we're gonna have to rethink about how we survive, because everybody's not gonna survive. So adapt. That is my thing. Adapt.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that. That's ringing in my ear, because we're just having this conversation with a group of people, and we have a think tank, and especially when you're looking at our ancestors and you're looking at our situation, accepting something and adapting is two different things. And for some reason, we've led to believe with propaganda and miseducation that our people accepted things. So adapting, like you said, is something that is necessary. And while you're adapting, you're also studying and getting the resources that you need to, again, change the situation. But without adapting, I don't see that you could do much. But again, there's a fine line between accepting something and adapting. And again, not adapting to like benefit off of people's problems or be parasitic as well, but more of being able to adjust with the times. They always say
Absolutely.
that the concept of African centered, which means what's best for African people at the time. So the stuff that was best for African people 40, 200 years ago is not the same thing now. And the studying and adapting is definitely something that's going to do that. So I really appreciate you coming on. Somebody should be a regular guest. I agree. So anytime we have any more topics that you can contribute to, we definitely welcome you on. Everybody else, thank you for watching, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. Actually, we have a brother on talking about some retirement, which is an early person who retired, and we're gonna look at it from an African-centered lens and things that we should be doing. So I'll catch y'all later. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.